Alright guys, and welcome back to another video from TIK-TOK Gaming. Today we're going to be doing a Ask Me Anything question from a picture that I posted on TikTok, funnily enough, which was this picture here. And we got quite a few questions, a few good questions there, a couple of ones we won't be bothering to answer, but yeah. Let's first look at Chani P99. Where did you deploy? So I deployed to East Timor in 2010 under Operation Astute, and Solomon Islands in 2007 under Operation Anode. They were both peacekeeping operations, both different from each other, but we'll get into that later with some other questions, I think. Something I might do is after each question, I'll put a few videos that relate to that question up. Alrighty, so the next question we have, and these are just in random order. What did you do before the army, and what did you do after? So before the army, I was working on a farm, sort of casually, and a volunteer firefighter. And yeah, served in a couple of big bushfires. One being Black Saturday. But yeah, I wasn't doing a whole heap before the army. And afterwards, I went to uni to study to become a paramedic. However, that didn't eventuate due to some service-related injuries, unfortunately. So, next question from Titty Teddy 92 is, let's hear your story about joining Brother. We all have crazy ones. So my story is a little bit crazy, I guess. I always planned on joining the military. However, I settled into the farm lifestyle and being a volunteer firefighter for a good while until I was probably just about to turn 20, when I was getting a bit sick of being asked what I was going to do with my life. By the parents, I picked up the phone, called 13 1901, and decided that was the time to join. My best mate did the same thing, and yeah, that's how that happened. Right, the next question is a two-part question by Pillow Talk Pineapple, and it is, what did you do for a job in the military? I was a rifleman, so ECN 343 bar 3 is the job code, I believe. And the second part is, any tips for anybody about to enlist? Think long term. If you want to be infantry, go ahead and do it. If you want to be a combat corps, go ahead and do it. But think long term. What are you going to do after you leave the military? Are you going to be a career soldier? A lot of people don't end up being that for various reasons, injuries including. If you want to be special forces, you're going to have to be an infantry or combat unit, most likely for a good couple of years before you can attempt special forces selection. What else? Kapuka, just keep your head down, be the grey man. Don't try and be everybody's best friend. Don't try and be the section commander's best friend. Just do the work and you'll be fine. Yeah, the one thing I can't stress is wear your hearing protection, wear your elbow pads, your knee pads and stuff, because you're not bulletproof, and at some point in time you will suffer, unfortunately. So the next question is something we've touched on before, but I'll touch on it again. It's from Bung Chowder. Where were you? Sorry, when were you in East Timor? I was there in 1999 when it kicked off. As stated before, I was there in 2010. It was probably not as intense, or the operational tempo was probably nowhere near as high as in 1999. Things got pretty hectic back then. My role was more of a presence and backup role for the other forces on the ground. Next question we have is from Pork and Gravy Roll. Cool name. Delicious roll too. And he says, "Hey buddy, what battalion were you in?" So I was in 8-7 Royal Victoria Regiment, so a reserve rifle battalion. There was two RVR regiments, being 8-7 and 5-6 RVR, who I deployed with Timor. So yeah, I'll put some pictures of our battalion colours and check it out. Just a quick one, because we've touched on it before, but from Scott2593, what corps were you in? Royal Australian Infantry Corps, so RA Inf. Yeah, that's about all I can tell you for that one. Told you that I was a rifleman, told you what battalion I was part of, so yeah. This one is from Stella7707. Did you manage to get over to Afghanistan? No, I didn't. There was a few roles popping up for a reservist, but at the time, being the Australian Defence Force as a whole was deployed to East Timor, Solomon Islands, Iraq, and Afghanistan, as well as multiple deployments. The reserves picked up a lot of the lower level deployments, I guess. Because that was sort of an easier role for a reserve to move into, sort of the policing, anti-riot role. It wasn't necessarily all guns blazing all the time. The next question touches on what we just spoke about, so that's good. What was your role in East Timor and the Solomon Islands? They differed slightly. East Timor, as we were there pretty late on in the operation or the whole cycle of the deployment, we were there sort of more as just a force presence. They knew we were there. They knew that we were going to be there for the last election. So yeah, just for that sort of stuff. Solomon Islands, we had more of a patrol role, so we'd be doing patrols with the Solomon Islands Police Force. We would respond to calls that would be out of the realm of a Solomon Islands Police Force officer or the Australian Federal Police that were attached to them. So stuff like anti-riot training, policing work, everything from that up to the green role, so out in the bush if we needed to. We had observation posts, manned retrans posts with radio, so large variety of roles. Some patrolling in Solomon Islands, not so much East Timor, and working with police forces a lot. So we have one from user 73, and it's a large number. Sorry, user. But it is, what was your favourite weapon? Get this one a bit. To be honest, when you're in the military, you sort of don't have a favourite weapon. Probably the Steyr. That's what I use the most. The coolest weapon I shot would have been probably the Barrett 50 cal. And yeah, it's pretty good to get behind one at the the Minimi or the GPMG and let rip on those things. That's pretty fun. Magistivo, were you attached to any other units? Yeah, so as a reservist, that happens quite a lot for exercises and just to fill roles that it needed. I was attached to 6 RER for Talisman Sabre, and was then attached to a Special Forces unit for, I think, 3 to 4 months for their mission rehearsal exercise. Wasn't Special Forces myself, was just there to do the shitty jobs, basically. But it was some good training still. Rondo, Rondo Nobody. Did you work with any other nations? I did. On both deployments, I worked with. Sorry, I'll start with the Solomon Islands. I worked with Tongan soldiers, some New Zealand soldiers, some Papua New Guinean soldiers. Same in Timor. I worked with the Kiwis again. And I think that was it in Timor, just the Kiwis and us. Yeah, New Zealanders, great soldiers, with the other Tongans and the Papua New Guineans. We were there sort of to help mentor them as well and help them become better infantrymen. I almost forgot to mention that I worked with United States Marines on Talisman Sabre, and got to hang out with them a couple of times in Darwin before flying out to country. They were great operators, pretty funny dudes, very much like us. So yeah. So we have from Miss Diddy, 18. Did you do any specialized training? So I did. Probably the coolest course I did for my second deployment was the combat first aider course. So we were the first medics on the ground, to patch someone up and keep them alive until we could get a casevac in. Luckily, I'd never had to do too much of that, but yeah, did that, and also a course called BCCC, which was Basic Combat Communications course, I think. Um, Basically, you're the signaller for the section or the platoon. You're the comms guy. You've got to get communications. Also a good course, but got sick of that role pretty quickly. Both of those roles, though, were sort of roles for more senior soldiers, I guess, after you've gone through the sort of the gunner role, and then through up to scout and whatnot. Obviously, those photos are from like the course itself, not real life, so don't worry about that. Next question: the real Batman. Funniest time you had in the army? Had a lot of funny times in the army, so it's sort of hard to pick one. Probably one time where we rocked up to a village in East Timor. Everyone was busting for the toilet for number two. They had an actual toilet there. It was a old squat toilet. I'll see if I can find a photo actually. And someone bogged it up, so they bogged up the whole village's toilet. The one toilet they had in the village, they blocked it up by using toilet paper. There was a lot of nicknames getting thrown around. There was the bogger of, I can't remember the village, but yeah, that was a pretty funny day. And the poor villagers had to get in there and clean it out. I've actually got a photo. I'll chuck that up. I must admit I was waiting for this question, and it is from Corporal Tim Tam. How did you find the Army Reserve compared to the regular Army? So I probably spent more time in the Army Reserve. I just did a lot of full-time contracts for various things. But to be honest with you, there's idiots in every job you do. There's idiots in the full-time army. There's idiots in the reserve army. Yeah, t- good guys in both. I think Army Reserve cops a bit of slack these days. They tend to do a lot of humanitarian work now with COVID and the bushfires and stuff, which is really good for the country. But people forget earlier days when we actually did deploy and do some good work for developing countries. Alrighty, so from Psychopath 1324, could you relate to civilians when you discharge, and how is your discharge process? Again, mine's a little bit different. I was a reserve that did a lot of contracts and a lot of work, but I wasn't sort of on the barracks 24/7. So I did have a rough discharge process. However, I sort of did, uh, a couple of months on a full-time contract, then went to Solomon Islands, come back, and then pretty soon after that, started training for East Timor. After that, I got back and went straight to uni after a 2-month break, and it all sort of come crashing down. I was diagnosed with adjustment disorder, and PTSD, but that's important to note that wasn't just from the military. It was from stuff that happened after the military, stuff that happened before, and stuff that happened in the middle of the military. So yeah, but he's definitely a an issue. I think the biggest issue once you leave the military is you sort of lose your whole support network. So all your mates that you trust your life with, they go off and do their own thing, as does everyone else, and you're left with, this what you know as civilians. And yeah, you do get quite angry for just little things. Takes a little while to fit in. That's why I say it's important to plan ahead when you join the military. What are you going to do afterwards? And have a strong plan, because that can really mess blokes up, and obviously the girls too. Mischief86 says, "What were your best and worst days in the army?" Best days would be multiple. The best days would be when you hear Index over the radio, or you get back into country from a deployment. Worst days, when someone dies, either overseas, in training, or injuries. I suppose I should give an example. One of the contracts I was doing, one of the guys there was killed during a training accident, and I myself was involved in a training accident with a Molotov cocktail where I was lit a light, unfortunately, but did the right drills and got the fuel off me, and yeah, didn't get too burnt. Alrighty, so the last question, and we'll probably do one of these again if it's successful or popular. It's from Mr. Wu. If you had your time again, would you do it all again? What would you do differently? I would definitely do it all again. What would I do differently? I would have went for Special Forces selection. I trained for it on both deployments. Mates went off and did it, and I thought I'd be going to uni instead. I would have done that. If you have any intentions or any plans on doing it, make sure you just go and have a go, because it's probably my biggest regret is not attempting the selection course. Apart from that, I wouldn't do anything differently, but at the same time, I probably would have joined up and stayed in the regular army. Looking back, having done peacekeeping deployments, I would have liked to test myself in Afghanistan or Iraq, however. At the same time, yeah, I'm probably lucky in some ways I didn't have to get to or have to experience that. Yeah. Alrighty, guys. So again, probably we might do one of these again. Hopefully I answered your questions all right. Was trying to be as honest as I can. Nothing's been sort of upplayed or anything, but yeah. If you like any of the content on the channel itself, make sure you hit subscribe for me so we can get some more stories out there. We plan on doing, as I said before, some podcasts to get stories from sort of all sorts of servicemen and women from around the world. Thanks again, guys, and see you next video.